With the NFL draft coming up in a couple of weeks, everybody's making their bold claims and bold takes for what should happen in this year's draft class. It wasn't so long ago that the 2024 NFL draft had happened, and already a year later, there are some people who had some pretty terrible draft takes. That's exactly what I'm going to cover in today's video, as we're going to go back in time a year and take a look at 10 draft takes that aged very terribly. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about these terrible draft takes. Okay, so the first one is Danny Kelly from The Ringer, as he said, quote, "The Jets did the right thing taking Olu Fashanu over Brock Bowers." So the Jets were in an interesting spot before the draft, since you could really argue they needed an upgrade just about everywhere. But with Aaron Rodgers at the age of 40, and he also came off a bad injury that kept him out all of 2023, it wasn't much of a surprise that the Jets would focus on the offensive line and take Olu Fashanu with the 11th overall pick. Brock Bowers was still on the board, and they chose Olu instead. Danny Kelly at The Ringer liked the pick, saying, quote, "The Jets did the right thing, avoiding the siren song of a playmaker like Brock Bowers instead of drafting a position of massive need with my top-ranked tackle." Olu ended up being a fairly standard rookie, finishing ranked below average by Pro Football Focus. But it's hard to say that he was better for New York than Bowers would have been, who had over 1,100 yards and 5 touchdowns his rookie year. He had 90 more receiving yards than New York's leading receiver Garrett Wilson, and almost 700 more yards than their starting tight end Tyler Conklin ended up with. Olu was a below average tackle, and Brock is already looking like the best player in the entire class, arguably. Up next, Leger Duzeville ended up saying that taking Bo Nix at 12 was a reach. Going off the board to the Broncos with pick 12, Bo Nix was the 6th quarterback taken in the 2024 draft, behind Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Michael Penix, and JJ McCarthy. He was pretty constantly seen as a reach by most of the major media outlets, including CBS Sports. Leger ended up saying, quote, "Taking Bo Nix at 12 was a reach. Also, not taking a wide receiver until the 4th round was concerning, even though it was Nix's teammate in Troy Franklin." Despite originally being seen as a reach, Nix arguably had a better rookie season than any other quarterback taken in the 1st round other than Jaden Daniels, who went at 2. He led all rookie quarterbacks with 3,700 yards and 29 passing touchdowns. He was 2nd in QBR with 93.3 and led his team to their first playoff appearance since 2015. But he did have the most interceptions of all rookies with 12. The only rookie quarterback who looked significantly better than he did, or at least on the stat sheet, was Jaden Daniels, and the NFL agreed. He placed 2nd behind Jaden in the Rookie of the Year voting, and that take aged like milk. Leger ended up doubling down again, saying that Brock Bowers made no sense. That's our 3rd bad take. Going back to him, he also took issues with the Raiders draft class, giving them a D, and argued that their selection of Bowers was a bad pick. His reasoning for their draft being terrible was, quote, "Taking Brock Bowers in the 1st round made no sense. Also, the Raiders didn't take a shot at quarterback." These are 2 bad takes here. 1, that Brock didn't make sense, and 2, that the Raiders not taking a quarterback was a bad choice. For 1, Brock Bowers instantly became one of the best, if not the best player on Vegas' roster, and yes, the Raiders finished with 4 wins, but that was hardly Brock's fault. He led Vegas in receiving yards with 1,200 yards and 5 touchdowns. His 2 quarterbacks were Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, and he was a Pro Bowler and a first-team All-Pro in his 1st year. On top of that, no quarterback picked past Vegas' 13th pick looked good at all. The next quarterback taken was Rattler in the 5th round, and he finished with 1,300 yards. The quarterback class wasn't all that great last year in retrospect, and it makes sense for Vegas to wait. Bad take on his end. So next we need to talk about Pete Prisco, as he had to talk about A.D. Mitchell. Coming into the 2024 draft, there are a lot of people that thought Texas wide receiver A.D. Mitchell would be a 1st rounder. Some last-second character and consistency concerns had him slip to the 2nd round with the Colts at pick 52, who needed receiver depth, and they were mocked to take him in the 1st. Despite that, he was getting a lot of hype from draft gurus, and people thought he'd end up being Indianapolis' starting receiver by the end of the year. One of those guys was Pete Prisco, who wrote in his original draft summary, quote, "I love the pick of receiver Adonai Mitchell in the 2nd. He is a tall, fast receiver who will give them a nice addition to Michael Pittman and Josh Downs." Well, A.D. Mitchell didn't end up being a nice addition to Pittman and Downs, at least not in his rookie year. He finished with just 23 catches and 312 yards, and that was good for 4th on Indy's roster, but 500 yards behind the guy in 3rd, Josh Downs. He was supposed to be a sleeper that came in and overtook Alec Pierce, but that did not happen. Matt Verderame from Sports Illustrated said the Giants should have taken Rome Odunze instead of Malik Nabers. There were a lot of top wide receivers in last year's class, with the common stance being that Marvin Harrison Jr. was the best, followed by Rome Odunze and then Malik Nabers. Odunze was bigger and felt like more of a number one option, while Nabers was smaller but faster. Some pundits like Matt at Sports Illustrated felt that the New York Giants made the wrong pick going with Malik instead of Rome with their first rounder. He said, quote, "Consider me still stunned that the New York Giants did not take Odunze with pick number 6. At least in terms of numbers though, Nabers already looks like the better selection, and it isn't particularly close. In his rookie year with the Bears, Odunze put up 734 yards and 3 touchdowns. That looks pretty solid for a rookie until you see Malik's line with the Giants. He had over 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns with guys like Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, and Tim Boyle as his quarterbacks. He was the 7th leading receiver in the entire NFL, while Rome was 46th. At least right now, Malik looks like the better player, and that was a bad take. Okay, so next up we need to talk about the same guy who said that Brian Thomas Jr. was a questionable pick. Matt Verderame had another bad receiver take when he said that Jacksonville's selection of Brian Thomas Jr. was confusing. He said, quote, "Thomas is a talented receiver, but the pick was questionable when one considers how badly the Jags needed a corner, and none of them had been picked at that juncture. Regardless of how badly the Jags needed a corner, Brian wasn't just another receiver in that draft class, he was the best receiver in the draft class, and the Jags got him at pick number 23. Brian finished his rookie year placing 3rd in the entire league in receiving yards with 1,300, catching passes from both Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones. He also added 10 receiving touchdowns, a Pro Bowl, and a spot on the All-Rookie team. The Jags did decline from 2023 to 2024, going 9-8 to 4-13, but second-year pro corner Christian Braswell and rookie Jerrion Jones did play well at the corner spot, and the team's decline wasn't Brian's fault at all. They weren't going to compete in 2024, and they already have nabbed a Pro Bowl caliber receiver to pair with a corner they'll probably take high in this year's draft. Marcus Mosher from the 33rd team ended up saying that Michael Penix Jr. was a massive reach. The general consensus after the draft was that the Falcons' selection of Michael Penix Jr. was confusing. Some thought he was a good player that didn't make sense for a team that had just signed Kirk Cousins to a massive deal. That's at least what Marcus Mosher said at the 33rd team. He said he wasn't even good enough to be taken in the first round though. Penix was the number 8 overall pick, and it's a massive reach according to his consensus spot at 34. It's understandable to overdraft a quarterback because of the position's value, but this is a huge risk, especially for someone who has such a long medical history. Honestly, that was not a terrible take in my opinion. It turns out that the Falcons needed Michael more than people thought they would though, as they ended up benching Kirk in week 15, and Michael took over going 1-2, throwing for 775 yards with 3 touchdowns. He led Atlanta to finishing the year at 8-9, with great momentum going into next season. He finished with a higher QBR than Kirk did, and the Falcons are now trying to trade Kirk, and Penix looks like the team's starting quarterback moving forward. Jim Wyman from Pro Football Focus said that T'Vondre Sweat was a bad value. There were a few reasons why Texas defensive lineman T'Vondre Sweat fell down a few people's draft boards with a DUI charge and a weight that ballooned to around 400 pounds. But when the Titans took him in the second round, Jim Wyman at Pro Football Focus felt like they wasted their pick, writing, quote, "The 122nd player on PFF's big board was selected at 38. Sweat is a space eater, but 38th felt rich for him." PFF would later eat their words on the space eater, grading him a 76.2 by their own metrics, otherwise working out as the 15th best interior lineman in the entire NFL. He finished with 20 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 assisted tackles, and a forced fumble, a stat line that looks really good for a nose tackle and not a pass rusher. He proved to be an excellent run stopper on the defensive side of the ball and stayed under 400 pounds as well. He also kept himself out of trouble, and he really made him eat his words. Justin Mello from the Draft Network said that Ricky Pearsall was an emergency reach. That statement has a lot more to do with what the 49ers did after the season than what Pearsall did during the season. There was some thought that the selection of Pearsall from the 49ers was like when the Chiefs took McCole Hardman because they thought Tyreek Hill was going to be suspended. Hill wasn't suspended, and McCole Hardman was a bad player, and the Chiefs traded Hill away to the Dolphins anyways. Justin Mello from the Draft Network said after the draft, quote, "Both Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk have been floated in trade speculation. Drafting Pearsall in the first round feels like an overreaction by general manager John Lynch. Pearsall was a break glass in the case of emergency selection. When Ricky was playing, he was good though. He missed a sizable chunk of the year after he was shot, and took the rest of the year after week 7 to get back to speed. He finished with 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, but his selection proved to be for an emergency that was real, since the 49ers did end up trading Debo to the Commanders after the season. It wasn't an overreaction, and the 49ers now have a receiver in Ricky Pearsall who can step into a starting role. Up next, Tyler Greenewalt from Sporting News said that Kingsley Suamataia was an insane value. The Chiefs were coming off of 2 straight Super Bowl victories, but had holes in a lot of places like their receivers and offensive line. So when they took Xavier Worthy, the fastest receiver in the draft, and Kingsley Suamataia, a player mocked in the first round with their first and second round picks, a lot of people said that they had one of the best drafts in the league. One of those people was Tyler Greenewalt at Sporting News, who said, quote, "Kingsley can easily start at left tackle for the Chiefs and fill a huge void on the offensive line. So not only did the Chiefs get a great player, they got him at an insane value as well." But sadly that just was not true, as Kingsley didn't end up being a good player at tackle for the Chiefs at all. He struggled to earn a starting spot and was eventually benched so hard the Chiefs had to move their left guard to left tackle. He finished with a PFF rating of 39.4 as the 5th worst offensive tackle in the entire league. And while Xavier Worthy did finish with the 2nd most receiving yards for the Chiefs, it was only 638 yards and he only had 6 touchdowns. He wasn't anywhere near the playmaker people thought he would be for KC, and they had to bring in an older DeAndre Hopkins to help fill his role. The Chiefs didn't even have that good of a draft, and it showed when they got blown out by the Eagles in the Super Bowl. So yeah, maybe some of those were a stretch, but some of them were definitely ridiculous, and those were some bad 2024 NFL draft takes that ended up aging like milk. But what do you guys think? Which of these takes was the worst? What is another take I should include in part 2? And what is your take for the 2025 draft that I can talk about next spring? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all of the videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.